Okay, man. We are live. We are here. And folks, if you're tuning in, here I am with Taylor Johnson. And Taylor's down in Frisco, Texas. What's up, buddy?
How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well, thanks. To give everyone some background, you got the intro, but let me give you some background here. I met Taylor online, and I just couldn't believe that he listed himself as a performance coach for an esports team. And I'm like, dude, what is this? It was like geeking me out, blowing my mind. And Taylor, why don't you go ahead and tell them, man, what's your official title and where you're at your organization?
Sure. So for a holdings company, I work for Infinite Esports Entertainment. I'm a VP of performance. I've also spun out my own company called Innovative Performance Institute, which I'm a founder and president of. And our overall vision is to provide the leading edge in training, education, and resource for the esport industry. So with that, we create and develop comprehensive training programs around mindset, movement, nutrition, and recovery. And with the overall goal to promote health and wellness to millions of kids worldwide through esports.
Cool, man. And we're going to get into training esport athletes. We're going to hit that for sure. But before then, I want to answer the obvious question that most coaches probably have is, dude, how does a strength coach get into esports? Like how do you fall into that path? I'll be honest, when I first saw your profile, I was like, man, this guy probably came up in esports, like he was a gamer turned performance guy. But no, dude, you did the traditional strength and conditioning career for a long time.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so what I always tell people is my passion is performance, but it's my curiosity that navigates me through the world. So that's from the music I listen to, the experiences that I enjoy, the people I hang out with, the books that I read. And so, my background's in traditional sports. I coached in college and the NFL. And it was while I was in the NFL, I worked for the San Francisco 49ers. I was there 2 years where we weren't so hot. But you learn a lot, in the times of the ultimate lows, maybe more so than you do in the ultimate highs. And it was during that time when I was kind of looking for an area to pivot. And we had made it through one coaching change. I didn't think we were going to make it through another. And I've always been business minded and wanted to be an entrepreneur. My mom's side of the family is very much entrepreneurial. And so I started reaching out to mentors and colleagues whom I trusted and said, what else is out there? How can I have another impact? And one of my good friends and colleagues is the CEO of a tech company out in Toronto. And he just kind of threw it out there. He's like, hey, check out esports. I was like, what is that? And, I knew of it, but I had no idea how big it had gotten. And so I just started to dive into it, and I started to unpack and really ask questions and reach out. And
what do you mean? Like you like started Googling esports and researching people?
I started going on LinkedIn and saying, okay, we'll hit up people on LinkedIn, start asking questions and start Googling and understand, what is esports and what was it previously and what is it currently and what could it become? And I think once you really start to unpack, you realize there's way more similarities and differences between traditional and non-traditional sports. With the questions that you're being asked, one of them primarily was, well, why do you do what you do? When asking about how you train, how do you recover, what's practice look like? And the classic answer, and you'll find this in traditional sports as well, is, well, it's the way it's always been done. Which you have to respond, well, are you successful because of or in spite of everything you've done? Which is really hard to answer. But ultimately, that led to a lot more interesting conversations, which led me to where I am now, where I'm now, creating the structure, systems, and scheduling to optimize performance for the gamers.
So let's talk about the one statement, because you said this before, and this was the one that I thought would be like the meat of this podcast. There are way more similarities than there are differences. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about it, man. What is similar between a linebacker for the Niners and an esports athlete?
Yeah, so I think you're already thinking too granular on the bigger picture, right? In terms of structure, systems, and scheduling, the way sport is conducted, right? You have teams, you have individuals, you have coaches, you have analysts, you have seasons, you have practice, you have games. I mean, so on the bigger picture, it's quite similar. Now, the differences could be quite large, right? So while there are similarities, the differences are quite big. I mean, if you look at it, the physical demands, quite minimal, but the cognitive output through the roof. So if you can compare a linebacker to a gamer. the cognitive aptitude and their output when they're processing film and they're trying to understand schemes is on a very high level, right? You take football IQ. I mean, the average person, you know, they may say, well, football players not very smart. I beg to differ. They're incredibly intelligent, especially with the demands of what they have to understand and how they need to execute in game, right? The game of football is an extremely fast game, but some guys are able to process so quick it slows down for them, right? So video games are no different. I mean, these kids are incredibly intelligent and they're able to process large amounts of information at an incredibly fast rate and make crazy decisions lightning fast, but then also communicate those decisions to their team members. So if you ever watch, you know, competitive gaming, or you listen in to their comms, their in-game communication, I mean, it's up there with the highest level athletes that I've ever been around.
Gotcha. So you arguably took a lot of systems that you ran in a traditional strength program. Did you introduce those to an esports program? Did you show up and kind of bring something to the table as far as implementing those systems?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. So when I first got into space about a year and a half ago, and I was consulting, I ended up working for a team overseas. So they have training camps just like any other professional team. They call them boot camps. And so I was out there for 10 days, and they were basically boot camping for a major tournament to qualify for a LAN tournament. So a LAN tournament is actually an on-site tournament. The majority of their games are played online until they qualify, and then they go to the actual location. And this was the first time any of them had ever been together in person, because a lot of times when they practice, it's all remote. It's all online, like we're speaking right now. And so I was flying out there. I was going to be the only coach on site. And I was like, okay, I'm going to talk to them about nutrition, training, recovery, all these things. We'll get them dialed in, get some movement practice in. But I told myself, regardless of what happens the first 2 days, I'm going to purely just observe. I'm going to do the due diligence to just observe and ask questions. And, it's funny because after the first 6 hours, I realized very quickly that all the stuff I want to talk about was important, but it wasn't as important as these 3 S's: structure, systems, and scheduling. And what I found out very quickly, again, is like, in esports, it's still in its infancy. And a lot of the structure around how to manage the day and the systems that fill in that day, and then also the scheduling of when they practice and how they debrief and how they recover, wasn't really in place. And so I really spent a lot of time just emphasizing that. And listening to their in-game communication kind of made me take a step back and look at this bigger picture of saying, okay, well, obviously communication is key. It was very interesting. This team was European. English was their second language. We had kids from Romania. We had a kid from Russia, Serbia, Croatia, but English is their second language, and they communicated in game in English. And so the communication piece was key. And I'm listening to these games, and the shot caller in the game, or the in-game captain, for instance, he was making this minor mistake, but nobody realized it at the time. It took somebody from an outside perspective to kind of call it out. He was making a call in game where he would say, "Can we take this tower?" which would be a strategic move. In his mind, it was a command. Everybody else thought it was a question. Can we? And they were like, I don't know, can we? Where in his mind, he was like, hey, no, let's take this tower. And so when we debriefed at the end, which they had never really done, we did a formal after-action review and did a proper debrief. And we brought this communication error up, and it was like a light bulb moment went on for all of them. And so from that point on, we were able to streamline our communication. So that's just a small example of how just an outside perspective can help optimize in-game performance. But really it goes back to, providing more structure, systems, and scheduling to allow them to be more successful in-game, as well as enhance everything outside the game.
That example is almost less of esports taking a cue from strength and conditioning. That's more like strength and conditioning and esports teaching with other weight rooms what to do, because that's communication in a stressful situation. I bet that's probably a component that most weight rooms lack, is practicing communication. Dude, really interesting. So to take that example about working with those athletes is like you could argue a football game, right, or a tennis match that lasts 6 hours. That's like an unhealthy event. Like in terms of training, that's overtraining. That's really stressful on the body. It's a competitive gaming. Is that a stressful period that you have to then take them and recover them and have some sort of post-competition process for?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and that's kind of what we're working through right now. So, we're partnering up with a couple of universities, and something I'm fascinated in is cognitive load and periodization. On the physical side, we do it quite well. We're able to work backwards from Sunday and periodize training and manipulate volume, density, intensity to work somebody up towards their match, but then also work backwards and understand proper periodization protocols and the recovery that it takes to get them ready to truly optimize game day. Well, that's never really been done on the esports side. And so that's what we're starting to unpack and say, well, what's cognitive load and what's cognitive periodization? We know the physical demand isn't as taxing, right, as the cognitive side, but yet physically they're sitting for like 8 hours a day. It depends, right? I mean, you have these scrim blocks, which are practice blocks, anywhere from 3 to 4 hours in length, and you may have 2 or 3 of them back to back with maybe a 15, at most maybe an hour break in between. And so to your point, it's really trying to optimize their day, and then also saying, okay, well, over the course of a week, what's happening in terms of this volume, density, intensity, and how can we start manipulating practice schedules to truly optimize when game day is? And for them, game day may be an entire week-long tournament, or it may be one day with 3 or 4 games within that day or qualifying rounds. So it's pretty unique in that aspect. And it's actually really fun. I mean, it's kind of taking everything I've learned in my past career and saying, okay, well, how can I, modify and adapt it to this new setting? And, it's not fitting a square peg in a round hole. You got to smooth out the edges a little bit. And it's truly organic in a sense of saying there is no right way to do it right now because it's a blank canvas. So it's, it's just kind of creating and innovating. And that's why, I called my company Innovative Performance Institute.
Do you squat these guys?
We do basic movement patterns. It's not like I'm gonna put a barbell on the back and have them squat 500 pounds like I did my D lineman. Not even close. I think the biggest thing is just movement. Can we teach them how to eat, move, and be healthy?
Gotcha.
And that's really the big movement in this. I mean, there's tons of research and literature that supports physical work capacity, enhancing cognitive performance, and that's really what we're pushing towards.
Gotcha.
For some of the guys, they've never exercised before, so we have training sets. I have a facility where we actually have guys come in. We have squat racks and med balls and all the facility, all that stuff. But really, it's about, we took 4 weeks just to teach them all how to foam roll and stretch and do modes. Gotcha. Until they understood it. So they were like, God, enough already. I'm like, all right, perfect. Let's progress. Right. Cool. But what happened is they ended up buying foam rollers on their own, buying the crossballs on their own. And then we actually provided a bunch too. But, in all of this, what I found is that at the very least, they're curious, which is perfect. Because if they're curious, you can hook them. And it's about teaching them habits that'll turn into lifestyle changes. It's like going back to when I coached in college. And that's why I love coaching in college, man. It's being a mentor. And it's taking young individuals, young adults, and helping shape them to be more successful. And that's, a big part of what we're trying to do. We have 3 pillars. The first one is player development, both personal and professional. So we're putting together programs and education around financial education, relationships, social media, how to deal with PR, social obligations. The second pillar is esports performance, and that is our movement, our mindset, our movement, nutrition, recovery. And then the last one is a bridge program to teach them, give them tools and resources to be successful for life after gaming. Because a lot of times these kids, their, average career is 3 to 5 years long. They start being a pro gamer at 17. So what happens when they're done at 20 or 22 years old?
So what makes them done at 22? I think esports, as long as you can game, you can play. Is it that trends come and go in the gaming industry? What cuts it off?
No, when you talk to a lot of them, they say it's burnout. Which
really?
Is oh yeah. So that kind of like flipped the switch for me. It's like, okay, let's really start to unpack cognitive load and periodization and say, well, okay, there's different types of burnout. So what does that really mean to you? And we're actually working with a couple universities to look into that as well.
Cool. Gotcha. Do you have any gamers or they like the back squat? Anybody who has some background in weightlifting that comes in and likes to tear it up?
Yeah. It's funny, man. Our CSGO team, they're all Danish. We call them the Great Danes. I mean, but they look like freshmen, like college freshmen, either like early stage, like tight ends or like soccer players. Like we got a mixed bag of like really athletic body types. We're like, okay, man, they're fun to train. They get after it.
Well, Danish people, they're large framed. You know, I'm sure a little bit in the weight room, and they're probably packing it on. Cool, good for them.
They get after it. It's fun, man. Like, and even like some of our other teams, like we have an Allegiance team, like a Rocket League team, and they're young. I mean, we got one kid who's 17, and another guy who's in his early 20s. They've totally bought in, man. They love training now. They come in, they get extra workouts. It's just like a college weight room or pro weight room, where we have, you know, set times, you know, where they come in at least twice a week and they train with us, but they have open flex days where they can come in and get more. And more times than not, they come in and get extra.
Wow, cool. You know, like, look, you've been around long enough that sometimes you'll meet a strength coach. It's typically like a basketball strength coach. And he's like, look, man, my guys just like to play ball. They just want to ball. They don't love the weight room. Do you ever get kids that come in and are like, hey, man, I'm not about this? How do you approach someone who comes in who's not as enthusiastic as, say, like your average athlete?
Sure. You know, I would say, again, kind of going back to the curiosity, at the very least, they're curious. You have some kids that it's not really their thing, but they're a little bit curious.
Okay.
Which is perfect, because you just get them hooked, you know. And it's kind of like the guilt by association sort. You know, the whole group's training,
right?
And they don't really want to train, but once they start training, they start to feel better. And I'm like, look, guys, give it a couple weeks, build some consistency, and I promise you feel better. And as soon as you can start predicting how someone's going to feel before they feel it, that's the magic, right? You know, I'm like, hey, foam rolling sucks right now, but trust me, you're going to feel better after. Like, oh man, I feel better. I'm like, I told you.
Do you think the most of these guys have come in with the training age of 0? I mean, this is like their first.
Yeah, majority. Yeah.
So they're going to see changes just from showing up and
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, just from building in the consistency, and then it's a matter of, you know, we're shaping the environment. So our headquarters right now, we've basically took over an entire co-work space. We're going to get a new headquarters in Q2 of 2019, and we'll build out an entire training facility. But as of right now, you know, we have meal preps and we have a huge fridge where we have, you know, like Muscle Milk's been incredibly gracious to hook us up, and we got Cellucor Sivation sending us product. And so we're trying to steer the guys in the right direction in terms of the supplementation and the food, and we push out infographics to them. We communicate a lot through their Discord channel, which is how a lot of the gamers communicate. So it's very different than traditional sports where you know, you're with your guys all the time. I mean, half my teams are remote. I have about 15 teams, and only a handful of them are actually in Dallas. I have
how do you train them remotely? How do you get stuff out to them?
Yeah, so we use an online training platform and push programs out to them through that. You know, we also through our Discord channels where we push out. We kind of have a schedule where every day it's a different type of message we're pushing out to them, and through our Twitter and stuff as well.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay, so you're in Dallas, and like we mentioned before we even got on this podcast, there are 3 esports teams in Dallas, or the Dallas area. You're in Frisco.
Dallas area, yeah.
Yeah, right. Is there a reason why there are so many teams right there?
Well, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys bought a team. So what you'll find is a lot of the traditional big sport organizations are starting to buy up esport teams just because they see the potential in it, which is pretty exciting to be on the front end of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's and plus Texas is way more affordable. You know, I think to start a business in Texas just makes more sense. I mean, I used to live in California, so coming out here, I was like,
you came from San Francisco. I'm in Washington, D.C. I go to Dallas, and it's like crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, I got to get out there. So let's talk about nutrition for a minute. So in your background, you're a strength coach, but I mean, you were doing a lot of stuff. You oversaw sports science, you oversaw nutrition. So like your background is well-rounded. I'm sure when you came into esports, your strength and conditioning knowledge, the way you implement it probably went down, and then the sports science and nutrition, the way you implement it probably went up a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of like Charlie Francis vertical integration, right? It's all these different variables being manipulated at any single time, and it's just what percentage you allocate to each one. So, you know, I have a director of performance who does a lot more of our actual movement training with our guys. I'm spending more time on the nutrition front, and the sports science really hasn't come into play just yet. I mean, there are some objective and subjective measurements that we're going to be taking a look at, some physiological type stuff, but really what I've shifted more into is more of a business role. You know, being on the corporate side and overseeing the performance, but then also spinning out the company and just trying to run that and get that to grow. But yeah, I mean, it's I still get on the floor and coach. I mean, that's what I love doing. Not as much as I'd like to, but I'm still on the floor. I make an effort to do that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the nutrition stuff, it's just real big to shape the environment, just like any other collegiate weight room or professional team. It's all about the signage that you put up and really kind of how you try to steer them in the right direction. You know, we make sure our vending machines aren't very accessible. And if they are, you know, we make sure we put a lot of healthy options before they get there. So they're like, you know what, most people take the path of least resistance. If there's something in front of them that actually looks pretty good to eat, they're going to take that versus walk the extra 100 feet to go grab a Snickers out of the vending machine.
To me, this is like massively important, bigger than strength and conditioning. Only a small percentage of humans on earth are actually competitive athletes. Most of us are like you and myself. We sit at computers eating for cognitive performance. That's a big deal. That's the vast majority of humans. So can you share just some things that you think are really important fundamentals when eating for cognitive performance, things that you and I can benefit from, that your gamers benefit from?
Yeah, you know, a big thing for them is trying to eliminate all the sugar from their diet, or at least trying to eat less of it. You know, it's a big thing for them is getting in consistent meals throughout the day so they don't get those crazy spikes in insulin. You know, if the first meal of the day, we try to get some lean protein, some healthy fats, and throughout the day, we're trying to get good servings of healthy vegetables and fruits. You know, post-train is a little bit different depending on the type of day that we have. If we're actually pushing, pulling a little bit of weight relative to them pushing, pulling a little bit of weight. You know, we'll put a little bit of carbohydrates on the back end. But really, it's just trying to get them to eat just a little bit cleaner and to build consistency in their diet. A lot of times it's all over the place. And so, you know, for anybody in general, it's just about building consistency and just trying to do a little bit more, a little bit better in terms of making sure you're hydrated, making sure to get in some really good, dense, nutrient-dense foods with fruits and vegetables, and getting some lean proteins and healthy fats. And then, you know, of course, be smart about where you fit your carbohydrates in relative to your activity throughout the day or relative to your training.
Gotcha. Supplementation, snacks. Do they snack? Do they do muscle milk like other athletes, or what's going on?
Yeah, so we got a bunch of muscle milk. The guys love it. You know, I prefer to give them that over like the Soylent and all the other stuff that's out there. The Soylent came after us pretty hard, and I shut that down. I was like, no, we're not going to do that. I'd rather go the muscle milk route, or there's some other great RTDs out there. You know, in terms of supplements, you know, from the supplementation and vitamin side, you know, we try to recommend certain multivitamins, fish oils. We have some great super green product. You know, if they don't like vegetables, I'm gonna say, hey, at least
super greens in a smoothie.
Exactly, right. You know, we got our guys on super shakes. You know, I don't know if you can follow Precision Nutrition and all. That's where I have my nutrition certifications from, level 2. So for us, like, we push super shakes and our guys love it. So we have a bunch of Nutribullet blenders, and they go in there and they make super shakes all the time. And I mean, again, it's a slow process, but they only know what they know. So really it's a matter of just educating them, like being good about the education and not just having it be a one and done. So a lot of times, I mean, I'm really a big fan of this fence post concept. So you drive down a fence post, that's your big idea. Maybe it's around eating vegetables, you know, and you walk a couple feet, drop another post, walk a couple feet, drop another post, but you always circle back to the main theme. And so for us to almost like building this marketing campaign or this education campaign around how to reinforce the concepts we're trying to really get across to them. And that's been fun too. I mean, it's thinking outside the box and, you know, taking the best of the best from traditional sports and saying, okay, well, what's been done? What hasn't been done? What could be done better? And again, going back to this being a blank canvas, it's been a creative experience, and one that I'm very much enjoying.
Cool, man. I'm glad you mentioned super shakes. It's one of those things where it's so simple, but it's like so effective. It's just no other way to explain it. I'm sure with these guys, like a lot of young people, breakfast you know, the first meal, that's usually the unhealthiest meal. A lot of people eat a shitty breakfast, and just replacing that with a smoothie like you're talking about, that's almost like the first domino in a nutrition intervention.
Yes, most definitely. You know, that's actually a great point. I mean, a lot of our guys wake up fairly late. You know, their practice schedule, their scrim blocks go quite late, and they end up gaming after for a long time too. So their first meal of the day is probably around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Luckily for us, they come to the facility because we have food for them, and it's all healthy meal prep options. For our new headquarters, we'll actually get an in-house chef and a cafe for them. But, you know, for the time being, we have meal preps. And so we know at least the first meal of the day, they're actually going to get some good quality food in. And that just kind of helps, like you said, start that cascade of the downstream effect of eating good food.
Yeah, they don't get the cravings.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, the other thing, going back to shaping the environment in their gaming rooms, you know, they have, you know, practice facilities, practice areas. You know, we put a nice mini fridge in there, and instead of having sodas and energy drinks, we have LaCroix and water and coconut water. We have beef jerky, trail mix, string cheese, apples, all that kind of stuff. You know, so, and again, it's path of least resistance. They're going to grab that first because it's there versus walking down the stairs, around the halls of the vending machine.
And that's human behavior. That's just not unique to you guys, right? That's something everyone could use.
Exactly.
Are you guys ahead of the curve? What do other esports teams do? Are they into this performance thing, or are you guys pushing boundaries here?
I mean, I'd like to think we're pushing boundaries. There's some other people in the space. You know, there's some great colleagues actually. You know, there's a few people that have crossed over from traditional side that are starting to get into esports. I think it's going to be more and more common. I'll do a little shout out and say, if anybody's interested in this field, hit me up. We're looking to expand our staff. We have 2 teams out in LA. We're going to be building out our Dallas headquarters, and we'll probably have something overseas as well, over in Europe. So I'll just throw that out there.
Nice.
Looking for a few good men to do a good cause, you know?
Yeah, man. There you go.
Men and women too, right? It does. So, you know, there are people in the space. I would like to think that we're really trying to push the envelope and say, okay, well, what's been done before and what hasn't been done? You know, a good mentor of mine, you know, he'd always tell me, he'd say, you know, see what everybody else is doing and do the opposite. And that's always stuck with me. And so that kind of was the point for me. And with the 49ers, when our staff got let go, it was like, all right, it's time to do something different. I haven't looked back since.
So you're bringing me like flashbacks of reading the Ron McKeefery book. You know, he's going through the bookstore. He understands that his career just kind of hinges on an athletic director or football coach's decision, and he just decided to take it another way. I love it, man. Yep. It's so sweet. Let's talk about this component you mentioned, this third pillar about setting your athletes up for success post competition. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mike Rankin, head strength coach at Drexel University. Just got done with his master's degree, and his thesis was on the health outcomes of athletes post-graduation, post-competition. And the research is not good. Athletes who you think would have the tools to go out and be healthier individuals actually turn out to be less healthy than the average person after graduation. So this is kind of like I have some personal stake in this. Like this is a concern of mine that I eventually want to address. Like this is kind of my big picture. How do you do this for your guys?
Yeah, so we're putting together some different tools and resources, much like the NFLPA has in place. Yeah. You know, where we have financial advisors and we have a player development guy that we're working with to really give them just some options, right? I think the biggest thing is understanding that you do have options. And when I talk to a lot of our guys, you know, when they first come in and we have this introduction, like what is IPI and what are we here to do? I tell them it's 2 big things. The first one is performance. The second one is longevity. And the longevity is not only the length of their career, but it's a span for well beyond that. And I think it's just our obligation to take these young adults and really set them up for success. I mean, it's almost a crime to think that there isn't anything out there for them just because it's a video game, right? They're playing video games. It doesn't mean they're any different than any other person who competes at the highest level. And so for us, it's if they want to go into business, let's get them resources on how to go into business. If they want to go back to school, let's get them resources on how they can go back to school, whether it's junior college or go to the university, whatever it may be. And so really it's kind of organic in that nature too. I mean, we have some things that are pretty fundamental, But really, it's just all goes back to having these crucial conversations and saying, well, what do you want out of life? You know, when we sit down with our guys, with the teams, and we actually sit down with them one-on-one as well and say, what are your goals? I want to know 3 goals. 2 of them could be professional. I want one of them to be personal. You know, and talking about what's after this. And a lot of times they may or may not even think of it. But once you start kind of unpacking, they're like, well, you know, I'm actually really passionate about business. All right, tell me about that. You know, what does that look like for you? What could we do in your time here while you're a professional gamer to then take that and then continue on? I mean, we have about 20 influencers that are part of our brand that are just that. I mean, they're entrepreneurs in their own right. They were former gamers that are now just brand influencers, and they sign different contracts and deals. And I mean, they're incredibly successful just in that. And so I think it's, again, giving the guys options and saying, you know, what's out there, or what's maybe something you haven't even thought of before, which is, again, it kind of goes back to the whole mentorship side, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, there's no doubt there's kind of like a stigma, like my parents and your parents, maybe, you know, playing video games was kind of just like, that's a counterproductive task. That's something that a lazy person would do, right? That's like just a general cultural thing. Just kind of breaking that down for these guys, right? Just kind of fighting that stereotype.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had lately, especially in Uber rides. I feel like my Uber ride, the conversations are always in, because, you know, always small talk with Uber drivers, and they tend to always ask, you know, what do you do? And most of the Uber drivers that I've had as of lately have been a little bit older, and they're like, well, my kid plays Fortnite, you know, my kid plays Halo. And some of them are like really down on it. But by the end of that Uber ride, you know, even if it's like a 7-minute to 20-minute maybe ride to the airport, by the end of it, they're like, oh, tell me more. Like, it's complete 180. Because I tell them about the conversation we're having right now. It's like, hey, it's more than just them sitting on a couch playing video games, eating cheesy poops, right? These are kids that are competing at a very high level. And it's pretty exciting to be a part of it, you know, to help change that stigma behind it, and to create this paradigm shift. And to, again, that's why I feel so passionately, like we have a chance to really promote health and wellness to millions of kids worldwide through this medium. I mean, why not?
Let's talk about you as an entrepreneur, if you don't mind. I'm an entrepreneur. I love talking about it. I actually love speaking with strength coaches who take the entrepreneurial plunge.
Yeah,
it's kind of rare. You don't see it a whole lot, and a lot of them are my friends, and I love talking to them. It's a pretty brave thing to do, because the strength and conditioning career is pretty templated, right? You have the internship, the GA, you know which degree to get, you know the coaching trees. To break off of that, you know, it's pretty brave. So for you, was it scary at all to deviate? What was your mindset like? Is your mindset different now than it was working in a strength and conditioning staff?
Yeah, you know, I smile because I look back on my life and I've realized that it works in 3 and 10 year cycles. So since I was 8 years old, I've moved every 3 years, and had a major change in my life every 10. And so I think because I was always picking up and moving, the transition into being a strength coach just made sense. It just felt right, because it's like, hey, every so years you're going to pick up and move to a new job, and that's just how it goes. It follows that trajectory you talked about. So for me, it was a slight hesitation, but I felt such a burning desire. I was like, there's got to be something more out there. And to be quite honest with you, coaching in the NFL was phenomenal, but I knew it wasn't the end all be all for me. I always felt like there was something more, and I had more to give. And it was kind of like this burning desire. I was like, okay, but what is that? I got to chase that. You know, when I was 20, I left the country. I was training and fighting Muay Thai kickboxing, and I left. I lived overseas in Thailand for 6 months. My dad actually flew out for my 21st birthday and was like, dude, you should probably come finish school. I was like, yeah, I think you're right. You know, I had that itch. I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of want to finish school. But, you know, just kind of taking that plunge, you know, and really it's having a firm belief in your values and your priorities, and knowing that regardless of what happens, you're going to be all right. And I think that kind of speaks to the culture too. I mean, there's a lot of people who need to really truly discover who they are as individuals and really chase that dream. And I'm a huge believer that if you speak it to the universe will conspire to see it true. You know, like a year and a half ago, let go from the 49ers, was like, okay, what the hell am I going to do? You know, I was like, I'm going to kind of made the decision, like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to chase this esports thing. And if it doesn't work out, I'll learn something along the way and I'll pivot. I could always go back to traditional coaching. And I started having these conversations and putting it out there, and that led me to someone else. And it started making this spider web of connections, you know, and it's contagious. And then I was, at the core of it, I was like, I want to promote health and wellness to millions of kids. You know, let's do it. Like, how can I have the biggest impact? And I didn't really feel I could do that in traditional sports. And so when I saw esports, I'm like, okay, this is not just a US thing. It's not just a European thing. This is a global thing. It's a global phenomenon. It was just a no-brainer. I had to do it.
I love it, man. This is like a classic opportunity to meet someone who's ready for it. You know,
yeah.
It collides.
It's funny you say that, man. Like, it was, I remember having to tell my family and telling the core group of friends, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I was speaking to one of my buddies, and I was like, honestly, man, like, everything has led me up to this point right now, and I've never felt so ready. And it was, I mean, I'm still learning every day, right? You know, being an entrepreneur, as you know, right? You learn something new every day. And if you don't, you're not paying attention. And it's been a challenge. It's been a roller coaster up and down, but man, I've been enjoying the hell out of the ride.
Good for you, man. I love it. Tell me about building your team, the people you hire.
Yeah.
What are you looking for in someone that you want to join your team and grow your brand? I'm sure, dude, this is your baby. So you're probably thinking, man, you're probably real particular. Tell me what's going on.
Sure. Yeah. So my right-hand guy, Trevor Love, he interned for me at San Jose State. He worked for the 49ers for a short while. Then he was out in Kansas working for a D3 school. He was the first guy I called because him and I had a great connection. We were at San Jose State. I was like, he's just a great individual. He knows his values and his priorities. Just a phenomenal human being. And I had kind of kept, the big thing for me, and I think this goes for all strength coaches, is just the relationships you build along the way up. It's like always staying present. And I've always stayed in contact with the coaches I've met along the years. You know, even if I was turned down for a job or offered a job, I have always still stayed in contact with them. You know, even if it's just once a year, to shoot them a text, say, hey, how's it going? So for me, I fall heavily on kind of that traditional work ethic. I mean, strength coaches, we grind, man, and it's just a way of life. And what I've found, it's funny because I've been at a number of staffs, and it's always like the strength staff. We work so much more fast and effective and quickly than everybody else. And we're always kind of waiting for everybody else to kind of catch up to us because we're just so dedicated to the cause. Like, it's just what we do. And so that kind of mindset's really what I'm looking for. But really, can you think outside the box? Can you stretch your knowledge threshold so much that you grow every single day? And it's funny now it's like when I recruit people, and I've got a couple of guys with me now, I hit them with the matrix analogy. I sit them down and I say, you know, this is an opportunity. Okay. You can choose the red pill or you can choose the blue pill. You take the blue pill, you wake up, you go back to traditional sports, you do the same thing you've done day in, day out. You may have some innovative moments. You may be creative in the programs you make, and that's fine. Or you take the red pill, you pivot into a completely new industry, you create and innovate every single day. It's a blank canvas. You set your own destiny. There is no AD kind of hold you back in what you want to do. I was like, and you just go down the rabbit hole and you take it for a ride. More times than not, that works pretty well, right? And then it's like it's a funny follow-up. I'll actually, if they accept, like what Trevor accepted, you know, I sent them a little red pill in the mail and said, welcome.
I love it, dude. I was thinking the red pill rabbit hole, because like it's hard. Yeah. You're not sticking your toe into the esports here. You're probably all in. And once you're all in, you're not going to turn around and be like, hey man, I just did this, you know, casual stint in the esports. It's probably like you're taking the dive there, you know?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's no looking back. You know, especially I'm incredibly fortunate. You know, the holding company, our president, Chris Shaney, is a huge supporter of what I'm doing. Our holdings company is just phenomenal. And I'll speak a little bit about just our company in general. So we have two buckets. Well, first, I mean, we're the largest esport organization in the world right now, and for a number of reasons, but one of them being that we have two separate buckets. One of them is all of our professional organizations. We own 5. So 2 of them are franchises. They're located out in LA. That's our Overwatch League, and we have our League of Legends. And then our other 3 teams, we have Obey, Allegiance, and Optic Gaming. And so between all 5 of those pro organizations, we have about 15 professional teams and 85 professional gamers. And then on the other side of that, the other buckets are our ventures. And so we have merchandise, social media, we have a talent agency, we have my performance institute, we have an academy.
Is live events part of that? Do you hold live events?
We have live events too. That's called Engage. I mean, they're absolutely crushing it right now. They're building Esport Arena Arlington, which is going to be the largest
dedicated esports arena.
It's the largest in the world. It'll be the most high tech. I mean, it's it's pretty phenomenal. They're doing great things over there. And yeah, I mean, it's an entire ecosystem dedicated to esports, and that's why I think we're able to move much more quickly in this space and really navigate those waters. But I'm extremely fired up about our academy. I mean, our GGEA, Good Game Esports Academy, is going to be doing great things with the youth. And between us and them, we're going to be putting on youth development camps and performance camps. So it's all good stuff.
Sweet, man. This is so good. If someone's listening into this podcast, they want to keep up with you, they want to keep up with what you're doing, what should they do? Should they follow you on Twitter, on Instagram? What should they do?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm terrible with social media, but I'm getting better.
Maybe that's your next hire. Maybe that's your next intern.
Oh, we got one coming in. Yeah, we're good.
Good for you, man.
But if anyone else is interested, I mean, definitely let me know. So yeah, you could follow me on Twitter. We could probably post it afterwards. It's at @T_Johnson or Coach T_Johnson. And then Inside IPI is our other Twitter handle.
Yeah.
We could post that up at the end.
Yeah, I'll get it up there. Cool, man. Dude, I love it, man. This is mind blowing. This is a good breath of fresh air, man, for strength and conditioning in general. I hope people get on this thing and hope they reach out to you and you get the conversation going. So thanks for doing it, man.
I appreciate you having me on, man. Anything we could do to push out that message too, right? I mean, it's not about us. It's something much bigger than us. I think at the end of the day, strength conditioning coaches, regardless of the sport you work in, it's about developing a mentor, really. It's about pushing out this message and really trying to help shape and impact lives. And that's what we're trying to do. I'm just trying to do it a little bit different way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Same stuff, different way. I love it, man. Taylor, thanks for joining us. I'm going to post this up. Thanks everyone for tuning in here, and look forward to the next podcast.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.